Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. Today we have a very timely guest and a very timely topic. You may own a handgun or even a shotgun to protect yourself in the event of a life-threatening situation. Unfortunately, many people are finding themselves in that situation these days, and it's just awful. But how do you know that you have the mindset that you're able to successfully defend yourself and win a gunfight? So today we're really proud to have Jay Hawkins on board. He is the training manager at Reno Guns and Range. He's a former police officer, veteran of the U.S. Army, and he's going to talk with us today about training. It's been his passion for a long time. And welcome, Jay. Thank you.
How you doing? It's good to see everybody.
Terrific. I want to, let's start out with this topic that you talk about regularly, which is a defensive mindset. What is that, and how do you know if you have it?
I think a lot of people have it. One of the things we do have to understand is, as humans, from our DNA, we are not people that want to cause violence to another person. However, instinctively, we are built and designed to want to save ourselves. That's self-preservation. So one of the things that we have to look at, and we have to actually come to a balance and understanding, is that in a life-threatening situation, have we created through our training intuitive responses that allow, we call it the lizard brain, to be able to recognize whatever the threat is and be able to intuitively, appropriately respond to that threat. And one of the things that we see in the empirical data, when we see in our reality-based training, is that people that have not done training do not have the intuitive skills that when they're threatened to respond to something more efficiently. And that's one of the things that we work very aggressively at, is getting people to develop those simple skills and understanding of the body's natural reactions, the things that we naturally do as humans to make ourselves safer, how we make those things congruent with the tool that we choose. Today we're going to be talking about the handgun platform, but how we make those natural things that we do congruent with the tool that we're going to use to allow us to efficiently respond to that threat, and to also recognize that when we have been successful, to then disengage from that activity so it doesn't come across as overly aggressive or excessive or some other way you want to look at it. So we all essentially have the ability. It's just developing those skills to be able to use whatever tool we're choosing. And we also have to recognize that not everybody is going to be comfortable with every tool. And that's absolutely acceptable, but everybody wants to be safe. So we have to take the time to recognize what is the best option for you, how to get you trained to respond with that, to understand that, we're born with tools, hands and feet, that can be used to defend ourselves. Those were, with us far before any other of the tools. If you look at the whole evolution of man. So let's expand all that stuff so that when something happens, we do the right thing and we do it efficiently.
Terrific. Now, you and I have talked a little bit about situational awareness. Talk to us about situational awareness, which is a pretty popular term now, versus defensive mindset.
So one of the things that, I kind of have a problem with the way the term situational awareness is used, is in a lot of classes and stuff, it's, hey, just be more situationally aware of what's going on around you. Well, first we have to look at how the human itself is designed. Our eyes are in front of our head because we are by design predators. And because of that, obviously I can't see what's happening behind me, well, except for with the camera that's showing me. But I don't have that when I'm out and about in the public. So one of the things that many times is used as kind of a crutch is just telling people, well, you just need to be more aware. You need to be more aware. The reality is we're only aware of what we're aware of. Examples is, when you go to the movie theater, do you ignore the movie and just watch the entrance points for the theater to see if somebody bad's going to come in? No, you actually enjoyed the movie. That's why you went there. When you go to a restaurant with your family, you sit in a corner and get the see-through menu so you can find out what you want to eat, but still see what's going on in your surroundings. No, you get the actual menu and you read it. And so there's points where your attention is not going to be on what's happening. Okay, so let's not say, hey, just be more aware. How about we start training the recognition component, which is critically missing in a lot of our training, to allow the cognitive processing of information to happen more efficiently, because we've already done this in a training environment. We've created those neural pathways to success. We have that intuitive response. And now when something happens, I don't have to take the long path in processing information. I take the short path to the response that's appropriate and do the thing that needs to be done. So many times I hear about, students that are like, hey, I want to train for the best worst case scenario, that somebody's going to tell you, hey, when you walk around the corner in the alley, there's two guys wearing all black and they're going to rob you, one with a knife, one with a baseball bat, and go ahead and defend yourself. But that's not the world. The world is you're going to be doing something with your family, maybe driving somewhere like what we're seeing happening, across the country, and all of a sudden you take a wrong turn and you end up in the middle of something really bad and ugly. Okay, you didn't plan for that. So now how do we work through that? And those are the things that we want to, integrate into our training. And it doesn't take us a lot of, excessive resources to do that. It's very simple to do that. It's really about making our training more contextual, understanding the plausibility principles, and putting that into our lifestyle and things that we're doing. So we train for what's most likely to occur. And then as we get proficient with that, we're going to expand that training to those things that are more plausible outside of that probable circle. So when we talk about situational awareness, the first thing I want people to understand is don't get caught up on the crutch of, hey, I just have to be more aware. You're only going to be aware of what you're aware of. Train for that ambush and develop that counter ambush methodology so that you can respond more efficiently.
Terrific. So I wanted, we have a lot of people on the line right now, and I'm sure that there are some questions we'd like to, if you do have questions, please use that Q&A box on your screen, and we'll be happy to answer those.
Hey, while we've got a little lull before the questions, how often should somebody train? Should somebody train every day, say with dry drills, or should somebody train every week, or should they go do courses? What is the optimum thing that they can do?
So you actually have some awesome questions in there, and I'm going to hit the first one that we see as a really big mistake that myself used to teach, and we see a lot of people still teaching, is these dry fire drills. Okay, so I want to look at it from a both logical, reasonable standpoint as well as scientific. So when we press the trigger on a firearm in the gunfight, what should we feel from the gun? Correct answer would be recoil. Absent recoil, we should be able to immediately recognize a failure in that tool to work and fix it. One of the problems with dry fire practice is we're actually training the brain that a failure, click, no recoil, no noise, is an acceptable thing. And in a critical incident, when the brain is already excessively overloaded with trying to process information on something trying to kill it, we're now adding to that, expecting something to happen that's not going to happen. So we actually no longer teach doing dry fire practice. We have found other avenues in which we can get people to train with proper finger position that doesn't relate to the gun directly, so we're not creating those negative neural pathways. To the training question, we have to be able to train within the resources that we have available to us. Yeah, it would be awesome if we could go train every day. I work at a range, at a training facility, and I don't get to do that. I'm here every day. The reality is I probably get, really once every couple of weeks that I can get on the range and shoot, 200-300 rounds. But I have the luxury of working in a facility that allows that. What I tell my students is, if you do things in context, meaning that if you do something other than look at the paper target as a paper target, and you actually give the hits and misses value, and you add context to it, you're going to get a lot more value from your training than the person that actually spends every day just shooting a paper target. Because if you just shoot a paper target and that's all you look at it as, all you've done is train yourself to be attacked by a paper target. Now, paper cuts do hurt, but they're not going to kill you. And what I say by adding context is, one of the things we talked about earlier was that recognition component, recognizing the need to have to be able to defend yourself, to have to use force to stop something. So when you're on the range, if you come to like our range, which is an indoor range, and you have 3 or 4 people that are shooting handguns, but one guy at the end is shooting a rifle, well, then the rifle discharge is the recognition of the need to shoot. If you have a shooting partner with you, that shooting partner can give you a cue that causes you to have to identify or recognize as the need to shoot. One of the great advantages to a lot of ranges is they have the articulating targets where they're friend and foe. If you have a shooting partner, your shooting partner will articulate the target. When the target faces you, that's a recognition of a need to shoot. As you're shooting, when the target does something different, it articulates away, it moves away, it does something that would be indicative to behavioral changes in the level of aggression, we stop shooting. Because one of the other huge problems that we have is, the old school of thought of, shoot 2 or shoot 3 and assess what's going on. Well, let's be real. If somebody's trying to kill me, I'm not going to shoot 1 or 2 rounds and stop what I'm doing that makes me safer to look at the thing that's killing me or trying to kill me to then assess, oh, I need to continue. I want to continue doing what I'm doing until such time as they're no longer aggressive, recognize that change in behavior, and stop doing what I was doing. For some reason, I just lost somebody looking at a black screen. I don't know if that's what I'm supposed to see or not.
That's Paul.
Oh, okay.
He'll be back.
Yeah. So when we talk about training, train within the resources that you have available to you. If you can go once a month, cool. If you can go once every couple of months, cool. Just put value in what you're doing and make the training contextual so that you're getting much more value from it in the limited resources that you have.
Terrific.
So I think I answered all of his questions.
We do have a couple of questions from the audience. Grace writes in, what would training for an ambush, which you spoke about earlier, what would training for an ambush look like?
So one of the things that we do, and you can do with your training partner, is if you have a target and on your target you have different numbers, okay, it's one of the things that we'll do frequently, and you have the target out and you have, especially if you have the ability to articulate, is you give them a math problem. Okay, the math problem answer is on the target. So now there's that cognitive load of trying to figure out what's going on as you're under the pressure of then drawing the firearm, getting the firearm onto the target and making the hits count. Okay. When we look at the paper target and it's a silhouette target, consider something that has scared you in your life before and imagine that that target is in fact that scary bad thing. As you're shooting, it stops being the scary bad thing and you stop shooting. Now, to save on ammo, we actually recommend, shoot 3 to 5-ish rounds without developing a pattern. Humans very easily develop patterns. So we want to avoid doing the 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. We want to mix it up a little bit. And that's where, especially if you have the target that articulates, you can do that. If you're out in the open and you can set up multiple targets, say 2 or 3 targets, and now you're kind of moving side to side with those targets, your shooting partner can call out something that you need to identify. It might be one of the ones I like to use a lot is spelling the word pie, adding the mathematical pi symbol, adding a slice of what looks like pizza pie, okay? And to give them a, problem of just say pie. Well, now they have 3 potential targets, so it can actually become a multiple target engagement, but they have to recognize what the problem is. Simple math problems, asking them, what is a number squared? And they have to search for the answer on the target, or what's the square root of a particular number. So now we're adding that cognitive load to it. I won't give some of the tricks that we use in the training to create an actual ambush thing, because it is if you already know it ahead of time, it doesn't work. But there are things when we're just doing routine training that I will give them a command that they have not heard through the day. And now they get caught in that goofy loop, or that cognitive load of trying to find the answer. And that's your ambush. That's your ambush opportunity to, hey, all of a sudden I knew I was always shooting this one box, or I was always shooting this one number. And all of a sudden you gave me something that we hadn't even talked about. It's on the target. It's clearly visible, but now you have to search for it. Just like in the real world, if you're walking through the mall and all of a sudden you hear the loud bang, was the loud bang gunfire? Was it a backfire from a vehicle? Was it something heavy that was dropped on the floor? We have to recognize what it is before we can actually respond to it. The best training is to be able to have the ability to do reality-based training. So reality-based training is something that was primarily utilized by law enforcement and the military for many, many years, because we actually are creating neural pathways in that training. We've added the necessary emotional component, and we do that in a lot of classes here. The way that it's done properly is the student has training in the early half or the day before, so they understand, what they're to do. They understand the tactics and strategies. And then we go into the reality-based training room. They're given a simple scenario. Like in our home defense tactics class, the scenario is your best friend called, they're remodeling their home, and they need someone to stay at the house for a couple of days because they have a family emergency and they just have to go. I mean, let's be real. Who's going to tell their best friend no? So now you're in a home that's not yours. Your weapons are secured. Now somebody tries to break in the house and you're going to need to respond. If you follow the training, you respond appropriately. If you start to do the wrong thing, we're going to pause you. We're going to ask you in your own words, what's happening right now? You're going to explain to us. We do this because we want to make sure the student is actually comprehending what's really happening and not something completely off the scope. So as they're doing that, we ask them then, what is their plan? They'll give us a plan. We also look to see if they are giving us the right plan or a plan that doesn't make them safer. And we simply ask that question. Is what you're planning going to make you safer? That is the ultimate goal. If the plan they're doing is not going to make them safer, this allows them to go through that whole cognitive processing of, hey, what should I do? Once we know they're going to do the right thing, then the scenario resumes. So in those few moments, might be a minute at most, they have that opportunity to allow the brain to develop a plan that's appropriate to the response, and now they get to do it. So they've created that neural pathway. So should they run into something similar to that in the real world, they've already been there. They've already done that. It's like driving your car. If you think back to the first time you drove your car, oh my God, everything's chaotic. You know, you got your parent yelling at you, you got, you know, maybe the radio on, or if you're with your friends and not the parents, they're talking, and all of a sudden somebody in front of you hits the brakes. And oh my God, all your stuff goes everywhere. But now you've been driving for years. Somebody hits the brakes. You don't spill your coffee. You catch the kids so they don't drop their stuff. You do all the things that are right. Why? Because you've been there, you've done it. Through frequent and realistic training, you've created those neural pathways to respond more efficiently for that situation. So we're just taking that, what we consider the warrior expert theory, and applying it to our tools in a life-threatening situation.
Great. So second question is, so how do you train drawing your weapon, sighting, and firing when many ranges do not permit drawing?
That's an awesome question. So there's a couple things in there. So presentation from the holster, a lot of people get kind of caught up on, hey, you know, I want to do it from concealment. We don't allow concealment presentation here either, but we do allow presentation from the holster without concealment. The reason we don't do concealment is your clothes is going to change. So if you're doing it without pulling concealment and just doing the draw stroke, all is good. One of the things to understand is if you're actually driving the gun from the ready position, and our ready position is the high compressed ready. So imagine you're holding a pickle jar and the lid's too tight. You would bring it close to your body, center chest, to manipulate the lid of the jar to get it off. You would also do the same thing if you're trying to, you know, loosen or tighten the screw on your glasses. Okay, we do this because we're stronger, we have higher dexterity, and it also allows us an opportunity to defend if somebody wanted to take the firearm from us. So what you can do is, absent the ability to actually bring it from the holster, is on the range, drive from the ready position out. At home, with obviously an unloaded, confirm that the weapon is not loaded, we draw the weapon to the ready position, okay? So we're just taking it from the holster, we're bringing it to the ready, and we're holding. The reason I don't want you driving it all the way out is when we look at the context of what we're trying to do, when you drive the firearm to extension, you should feel recoil. We're driving that gun out to defend ourselves. It's contextually accurate that I may draw my firearm to the ready thinking that there's an actual threat, discovering there's not, and returning it back to its holster. So this gives me the opportunity to practice those draw strokes without going into creating negative neural pathways. Like I said, on the range, just drive it out and, you know, get the extension. Now to expand upon it, because you brought it up in the question about looking for the front sights, we need to understand and think about this from both logical, and then we'll also get into the science. If somebody's trying to kill you, where do you think your focus is? If we understand that we have 5 senses, well, obviously, I don't want to smell the person that's trying to kill me. I sure in the heck don't want to be tasting them. If I'm feeling them, they're probably way too close. My hearing, though it provides information, is not going to give me the accurate information about what's occurring and how to defend against it. So my primary source of information is going to be visual, meaning that both eyes are going to be hyper-focused on the threat. Okay, the term is increased visual acuity to the center field of view. Looking at the eye, in your eye, you have cones and rods. The blood's going to rush to the center field of view to provide the brain with more information, clarity of what's occurring so it can process how it wants to defend itself. So we actually don't teach initially sighted fire because we know in the critical incident, your focus is not going to be on the sights. That actually requires a cognitive decision that, hey, I'm not going to look at the thing that's trying to kill me. I'm going to look at something small on the end of my gun, which doesn't even make sense. I'm going to focus on the thing that's trying to hurt me. I'm going to drive the gun out in parallel with what I'm looking at. It's called kinesthetic alignment. I'm going to touch the trigger, press the trigger, and hit the box, hit the target, okay? We teach this right from the very beginning. We teach the intuitive unsighted fire to develop that confidence in the tool. Now, because at some point I may need to implement more resources, i.e. I may need to use my sights, there's a point in the training we'll start using that. But if we understand that 86% of our shootings occur between 9 and 15 feet, 4% more between 15 and 21 feet, I mean, come on, we can all drive our finger out and point at something 9 feet away. If we learn and develop that kinesthetic alignment and we have our focus on the threat, we can drive out on the threat, we can hit the threat, and we're not slowing ourselves down to close an eye, look for sights, create focus on the front sight through the rear sight on the target. I just punch the gun out and shoot the bad thing until the bad thing stops being a bad thing. Then I don't have to shoot it anymore. So hopefully that answers his question on ways you can practice it. But just be careful, and that we're not creating negative neural pathways, because those will become conflict in how the brain is processing information at the worst time.
Terrific. Great answer. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. We've gotten a couple of questions online that I'd like you to address as well. One is, let me take this one first from Patricia. I just moved to Nevada. If I have to use a firearm to protect myself from someone breaking into my home, is the law on my side here in Nevada? Can I be arrested, or can I be sued by the one that threatened me or their family?
So yeah, in the Nevada Revised Statute 41.095, it specifically talks about defense within the home. So long and the short, if somebody tries to unlawfully enter the home with the intent to commit burglary or home invasion, a reasonable person would be in fear for their life. Okay. And that's what the courts look at, is how would a reasonable person respond? So what they've done is they're essentially establishing that a reasonable person, somebody breaking into their home, would be in fear for their life. But just because the law says we're okay doesn't mean that we should automatically shoot somebody or use lethal force against somebody. And one of the examples I'll give is back from my law enforcement days, especially around the holidays. We would get a lot of relatives that would come to Reno, 24-hour town. They'd go out drinking and partying. They'd have somebody drop them off at what they thought was their house. Because if you look at a lot of these subdivisions, there's 4 or 5 different colors and 3 or 4 or 5 different models. So they all look the same. And we've had people, especially when doors were unlocked, walk in and crash on the couch of the wrong house. So as a homeowner, waking up to somebody who's unlawfully entered your home, that's a scary thing. But the fact that the person's asleep on the floor or on the couch, we have to use some common sense. That's not somebody who's trying to cause harm to you. That dramatically differs from somebody, kicking in your door or somebody breaking into your house in the middle of the night, where their intent is to cause harm or to burglarize your home. Yeah, a reasonable person would be in fear for their life, and therefore they're protected under that law. Okay. Everything is going to be evaluated. That's just part of what the role of law enforcement is to make sure there is no wrongdoing, because we have unfortunately seen cases where people have tried to use this law wrongly. One of the cases was in Las Vegas. A house had been burglarized. The homeowner lay in wait, had property inside the garage, had the pedestrian door to the garage unsecured, and when the criminal entered the property, killed the person. Well, that's murder. Okay. There's really no other way to look at it. That's totally different than you sitting in your living room, watching the Titan games, and all of a sudden somebody boots in your door trying to cause harm to you.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that, Jay. Another question that came online is from D. Thank you for allowing me to attend your webinar. I am a 68-year-old grandmother. I have taken a safety course, occasionally shoot 40 or so rounds at a gun range, and have my CC permit. According to the proper protocol of my handgun, I am to keep gun and bullets stored separately and my gun locked and out of potential reach of my grandkids. Of course, my highest priority is that my gun is never accessible to my grandchildren, period. But in an emergency, if I stored it as recommended, the gun would be useless as a defensive weapon. I can't even imagine trying to open a safe, get the gun, remove the lock, go to somewhere else, pull out a box of bullets, open the box and load my gun. This would only be productive if the prospective intruder would phone ahead and make an appointment to break in. What would you honestly advise?
So that's an awesome question. So kudos to wanting to protect the grandkids. Obviously, no one ever wants somebody who should be getting a hold of a firearm or any dangerous tool in their control. What the recommendation is being made is for when you're actually storing your firearm, not staging our firearm. And there is a distinct difference in that. So storage is where I'm putting the firearm into a safe. Have no intention of using it for defensive purposes. Pretty much I'm putting it away and I'm just going to forget about it for, whatever time period. When we look at staging firearms, we want that firearm to be in a ready to use condition. Okay, in that condition, there are several variations to it. We want it to be quickly accessible, but we also want to prevent unauthorized access to those that shouldn't have it, i.e. kids, grandkids, could be roommates, could be whatever, okay? The quick access safes provide us with that ability, all right? I want to have that quick access safe in a location where I spend the majority of my time. I may have one in the bedroom because when I'm sleeping and all of a sudden I hear, the either sound of breaking glass or I hear somebody walking through the house and it's not somebody that's supposed to be there, I can quickly access the firearm. Now, depending upon the condition of the firearm. So ideally, I'd want the firearm to be chambered. I'd want the magazine to be fully loaded, and I'd want a trigger guard to be covering the trigger so that when I grasp the firearm, my trigger finger isn't going to incidentally go into the trigger, and as I'm grasping, cause that trigger to be manipulated, articulated, and cause the gun to go bang, okay? Because then I'm putting holes in things I don't want to put holes in. The trigger guards are very simple to get. They're usually hooked to a tether. That tether will be anchored in your quick access box, so that when you grab the firearm and as you're pulling it from the box, the tether is going to release the trigger guard, then your finger would be somewhere other than the trigger. We actually train and want our trigger finger to be on the ridge between the slide and the frame of the firearm, so that as we grab and come out, we're not have anything that could get into the trigger. Because we've all had that grasp reflex kind of moment. If anybody has lived with somebody for more than like 2 minutes, they've had that walking down the hallway, Jesus, you scared the crap out of me. That moment where you're suddenly surprised and you grasp. Well, you can imagine that if you heard the sound of breaking glass, that you're going to be very anxious, that your blood flow is going to increase, that different chemicals are going to be released into our bloodstream. All these things are going to be happening, and now I'm grabbing a tool that has a hole in it. It's very easy for that trigger finger to get into that, so we want to make sure that that's covered. If you can't cover it, okay, maybe the firearm you have is unique and doesn't have a trigger guard for it, then what we recommend is that the firearm is magazine loaded, inserted into the firearm, but we don't have a round chambered. So this way, if you grasp the gun and your finger does get into the trigger, we're not causing the gun to go off and putting a hole in something we don't want to. This does require that we bring the gun to the high compressed ready, that we do charge the firearm, bringing it into a operational position, and then we can do what we need to do to protect ourselves, okay? So the quick access safes, we recommend that those are going to be with a simple combination lock on them. There are biometric technology available, but anybody who owns an iPhone has had those where you're trying to open your phone and it doesn't work. Part of that's just because of the oils that are not on our fingers to allow it to display properly. So using a simple combination lock that you practice when you're putting the gun in at night, you're taking the gun out. That's a great way for you to have it accessible. And you have the routine of being able to open that so that if you needed it, it's readily available. It's in a condition that's safe for the environment you're in. And again, you'll stage those where you spend the majority of your time. If you're a CCW holder like she is, like I am, I simply take my holster off with the gun still in it and put it in a secured location. That way, when I grab it, it's already in the condition that I know it's in every day, all day long. As I grab it, I take my second hand, I simply release the holster from the gun and establish my two-handed grip, or establish grip on the phone or some other means that I need to resolve the situation, but still having a hold of my firearm. So awesome question, and hopefully that answered it for you.
Great. And one more question from Jackie. I live in a rural area backed by open space. Someone is trying to break into my fifth wheel. What is my response since police are 30 minutes away?
That's also an awesome question. So here's the question I always give the students. At the end of the day, you get one of these two things. You can either have your life or you can have your property. You can't have them both. So with that question being put, well, most people are going to pick their life over their property. And it's just that. I get it. There's an emotional connection to your property, but it's just property. To go out and interject into something that's unknown. You may see one person breaking into your fifth wheel, but not realize there's two more people that are around the corner breaking into something else. To go out and confront one person and have those other two become involved does not make you safer. The safest thing to do is to make that contact to law enforcement, to secure yourself in the room that you have established as your barricade location, should they try to make entry into the home and cause physical harm to you. Again, it's a property crime. Property crimes of themselves don't justify lethal force, so we don't even want to go down that path if we don't have to.
Very good.
All right.
Let's talk about guns a little bit. Paul, and especially in this time of questions about our gun rights, I think you have, Jay, some recommendations. Paul, I know you do too, and some things you'd like to talk about with respect to gun rights as well.
Yeah, so, okay. So one of the questions we always get is, hey, what's the right gun for me? And one of the things that we've done as an instructor corps, and it's not just us here at Reno Guns and Range, is we're part of an international group of instructors, is we actually look at it with two standards. The first standard being an objective efficiency. So by design, from an engineering standpoint, does the platform make us more efficient in the context of personal defense? Then we look at it from a reliability standpoint. And what that is defined as, in the hands of students, on the range, civilians, law enforcement, or in actual shootings, have there been failures? When we look at some gun platforms, especially with a external safety and people are not training with it appropriately, we've actually seen students that have driven the gun out while under stress, or even on the range not under stress, and forgot to manipulate the safety, and now the gun doesn't work. That is considered a failure. It may not be the gun's fault, it's how we trained with that particular tool. So with that said, we actually recommend a modern striker fire, absent an external manual safety, as our primary or preferred defensive platform. Some of the other factors go into it is the bore axis. So if you imagine that you have a line going straight down the center of the barrel through the back of the gun, and you look at the top of the backstrap where your web of your hand fits, the distance between that line and where your web is where the gun is going to want to articulate. Again, we look at the science and Newton's third law, energy forward equal energy to the rear. Well, that energy to the rear and that articulation point is going to cause that gun to want to rise and articulate off that point. Obviously, the closer those points are together, the less of that articulation we're going to have. With the modern striker fires, they usually have a much higher bore axis, so it's closer together. So we're getting less of the gun articulating, which allows us to stay on target, allows us to put rounds more effectively or efficiently onto our target and stop the threat quicker. The other thing that we really like about them is that they have a consistent moderate or medium trigger press. Consistency leads to efficiency. So obviously we want to stay as efficient as possible. The firearms are proven to be reliable. So that would be our first or preferred choice. There are obviously other platforms that are available, and we have classified those. We do understand that some students are just restricted by what they have available. So we're going to spend the time to make sure they understand how to run the gun the way it's designed, and that they're manipulating the safeties or decockers or other things on the platform so that they're not going to have reliability issues should they have to use it.
All right. One of the things that we need to take into consideration, different people use different guns. And there's a good reason for that, because people are built differently and they're trained differently. The big thing is you have to train. If you train with a striker action weapon, then you need to learn how to keep your finger off the trigger. I personally won't use a striker action firearm unless it's got a safety. And apparently the US Army agrees with me, because they just took on the SIG 320, and the one alteration that they made to that gun was they added a manual safety. But anyways, guys, we've got to get we have a couple of things left on the agenda. I'm going to be covering the Ruger American pistol, the low recoil pistol. But before I get into that, I'd like to introduce Tanner Durfee from the Trump campaign, who's going to give you a little bit of information about how you can help. He's going to be quick, he's going to be up, give you a little bit of information how you can help keep your gun rights. Because without President Trump and without some of our local politicians, those gun rights will go away. Tanner?
Thanks, Paul. Can everybody hear me? You guys can hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, cool. Yeah, Jay, thank you so much. This has been incredible. Wasn't expecting to learn so much in so little time. Paul and Mark, thank you as well. Really simple, the first step to protecting your Second Amendment right is just getting involved. You can do that right now with the Trump campaign and with, state and local candidates. That's mostly what we're focused on, right, is our rights here in Nevada being preserved. So, really quickly, the best way you can do it is contact us over at the office on Keystone and 4th Street. It's simple. Make phone calls from home while you're watching TV. Talk to your, neighbors about about getting involved. Knock doors, make phone calls. It's just basic involvement. Super simple. It can be done by pressing a button on your computer or your phone. That's really all I have. If you're interested in getting involved, Paul will help you out. Obviously, we'll delve into a little bit more. Mark's been involved for a while as well. It's very easy, and I will happily train anybody on how to be proactive about keeping their rights. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Tanner, that's great. And what I'd like to do now is launch a poll for those of you in the audience that would be interested in getting in touch with Tanner or Paul about that. Go ahead and answer the poll. So I'll leave this go for about a minute or so. Just go ahead and answer that yes if you're interested in making some calls.
Also, there are local candidates that need our help, good Republicans. Matthew Montanezzi is on here. He's listening. I can see him. Great school board candidate, needs help, man. We need to organize. Obviously, the left is doing it, and we need to organize just as hard.
Okay, Tanner, thank you so much. And again, anybody that's interested, most everybody's got my email address. Just shoot me an email or shoot Mark an email, and we'll get right to it. Well, folks, here's one of the fun parts. We're going to do a little bit of gun talk, and some people love it, some people hate it, but we have the Ruger American pistol, low recoil. I'm going to unload it here. Make sure it's clear. Everybody can see it. A clear gun. This is a nice compact little gun. This is the compact version in 9mm. It's got a little bit of heft to it. It's a nice, nice shooting gun. It's one of the features of this gun. It's completely ambidextrous. Both the magazine release, the slide release, and the optional safety, and it is optional. So optional safety are completely ambidextrous. The gun itself, as I said, this is the compact version. It comes with the regular compact magazines, which slip in, give you a nice grip for the gun. But it also comes with the full-size magazines, which are 16-round magazines. So you have 16 plus 1 with a little extension on it so that you've got a little bit better grip. The gun itself comes with a couple of nice features, obviously being able to add some accessories to the bottom. The sights are pretty pedestrian. They're not high-tech sights at all. But for the price, this is a great gun. Now, the big feature of this gun, does it reduce recoil? I've got to tell you, after firing this one, I've put about 400 rounds through it, 9mm. I compared it to my Glock 17, and I compared it to my H&K P30, which is actually one of my favorite guns. The recoil is slightly less than the Glock, and not significant enough to talk about with the H&K P30. So after saying that, a friend of mine had the 45 caliber version. I tried that. Now this was the full-size one, and I did notice a fairly significant difference in the recoil compared to a well-made 1911. So there definitely is that benefit of that. I know, Jay, you've got some experience with these guns, and maybe you'd like to jump in here.
Yeah, it's a pretty new model. It isn't one that we have had the exposure to make it or add it to our preferred list. Part of that is just that, like I said, we want to see how students are running the gun. And that process will usually take us anywhere from 2 to 3 years up to like the HK VP9, we actually saw 8 years before we could list it. Partly because we just don't want to be telling people, hey, this is the tool you want to protect your life, if we can't actually stand behind it. It appears to be a solid built firearm. Ruger has some great products, and we look forward to seeing more and more students with it on the range, and see how they're handling it, so that it may eventually be one of those that we add to that preferred list.
Well, it certainly seems it's certainly the type of weapon that you've been suggesting. It's a striker fired 9mm, which is probably the most popular caliber right now.
Yeah.
It does have a little bit of heft. I personally am more of a hammer fired guy. I've carried striker fires, and as a general rule, if I go to the range and have some fun, and I'm looking for a pistol, I tend to pick up my H&K P30, which is a hammer fired gun, and I like that difference.
Yeah, and we run into this frequently, and it's I'm a big HK fan, like yourself. I've actually started running HKs way back when I was a much younger person with the USPs, and actually the P7 before that, and really like the way that they run. But like I said, with the VP9, which is a platform that I personally prefer, or a manufacturer I personally prefer, not having it in the hands of students and seeing how they operated it, just took more time for us to give the approval. Another example would be like the SIG P320. When the 320 initially was released, it was absent the disconnect on the trigger, and if the firearm was dropped with the the back of the gun striking, that trigger would continue to travel and the gun would discharge. Because of that, SIG quickly realized, hey, there's a oops here, and they went in and updated the firearm and added that mechanism to prevent that from happening. And, you know, as we're seeing more and more of them, it's one that's going to end up, you know, being on that preferred list. Again, the Ruger fits in the category. We wouldn't recommend the, you know, external manual safety because of the grasp reflex and because of the failures we see with students training. Like yourself, I grew up on a 1911 platform with an external manual safety. And to this date, I still sweep the strong thumb. But seeing so many people that aren't doing the training that, you know, you and I or others are doing, we want to make sure that the average person purchasing, you know, the one gun or a gun to defend themselves are going to have the tool that's going to be the most efficient for them and the simplest for them to operate. So that's where we look forward to seeing that firearm, you know, at the range in our classes, so that we can, you know, discuss it more and, you know, hopefully get it added to that list. And there's several that are already added on the list. It's not a particular brand or one model, because, you know, you brought up an awesome point about how everybody's grip is slightly different. And that's one of the first things that we talk about with students is we're looking at fit. Can you reach all the buttons and controls with just your strong hand only? Some people are going to have longer finger. Some people are going to have thicker or smaller palm sizes. So what for me might work as a double stack or staggered magazine, thicker gun, for somebody else, they may need a single stack. And our manufacturers are actually, you know, really recognizing that. And they're coming out with more and more options that are available to allow to fit, you know, especially the largest growing body within the firearms, you know, are women. You know, there are more and more women that are wanting to have, you know, firearms to protect themselves at home or firearms for CCW or to protect their businesses. And the firearm industries have recognized that, and they're starting to build tools, you know, guns that are going to fit them better and allow them to manipulate them better, that are still very cost effective. And, you know, hopefully this will be another one of those that falls in there, that we can add to the list, because, you know, the more reliable options we have for, you know, our student base and our customers, you know, the easier it is for them to get the right tool.
And again, I think that if I'm to drive home any point to anybody, again, you've heard from somebody who doesn't like safeties. I love safeties. The secret is training, 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 training. And I would implore you, whether you go down to Reno Guns and Range and get your training from someone like Jay or one of his staff, or whether you train with someone else, front sight. I know Mark's a big fan of front sight, but wherever you go to get your training, you've got to train. You've got to learn how to use this tool that we call a firearm. You've got to learn how to do it. And the more training you get, the better you become at it. The more practice you get, the better you are. And sometimes your life may depend on it, or the life of one of your loved ones. So again, folks, training, 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 practice, practice, practice. Doesn't matter what your opinion is. There's never just one right answer, but training is definitely key. Again, folks, anybody that's interested in working with the Trump campaign or any of the candidates that we have defending our Second Amendment rights, because if we want to keep them, we better be willing to defend them. Because trust me, I come from a country where you don't have Second Amendment rights anymore. If you want to have a gun, you've got to go through all kinds of hoops to own one, and it's incredibly restrictive for shooting sports. And that's more and more countries around the world. We're the one beacon for freedom. We're the one beacon for people having the absolute right to defend themselves. And we got to keep it. So again, I can't say it more. I can't say it more exciting. We have to help these people. And if you can give an hour a week, just 1 hour a week, making some phone calls from your home, you can affect that you can make that a great effect on that. You can do something that will make that a positive effect on that. And
Paul or Tanner?
I'm done. I'm off my soapbox.
That's good. Give us a way to contact you again, either Paul or Tanner.
All right. Tanner, do you want to give them your email or your phone number?
Yeah, if anyone has a pen handy,
Yeah, use mine.
my phone number is 530-440-8566. I'm a field organizer for the state party of Nevada. I work for all candidates willing to protect our rights, our Second Amendment. It's important that we stand
Give us our
behind
phone
these
number again, Tanner.
Republicans. My phone number is 530-440-8566. And that should wrap it up. We need you guys. Right now is the time. I want my kids to be able to have guns one day. And right now, I'm not so confident that that's actually going to happen.
Mark?
Good. So we're about wrapped up here. I've got a couple of polls that I'd like to share with you in just a second. Okay. I'd like to get your feedback on other topics that you'd like us to discuss in future meetings of this sort. So I'm going to launch that right now, let it go for about a minute. And then I'm going to ask you to evaluate what you thought of the session today.
That's a great poll, Mark. I really enjoy the fact that you're doing these, because I think that allows people to get their input and let us know what they want.
Exactly.
And there are some awesome topics that are on there that would be, I'd be more than happy anytime to come back and discuss with you guys.
Count on it, Jay.
The most depressing one's the bottom one about hunting when I didn't get a tag.
And again, we want people to, we want your input, because this whole show or this whole Zoom call is about you, the viewers, is about you, the folks that are sitting out there, the people who own guns, the people that love guns, the people who want to maintain their gun rights. This is all about you, and we want your input, and we want everybody to get involved. Our audience has grown exponentially over the last 4 sessions, couple of months, and we expect that to continue. And we'll be doing in-person meetings at some point. So again, we'd love to see you guys and hang out with you. So fill out those poll questions. I'm going to hand it back over to Mark.
Terrific. I'm going to end that one. And then finally, let's do a evaluation of how you enjoyed today's meeting. So another minute on this. And then we'll wrap it up.
It was great. We had a great time.
Yeah, this is actually one of the coolest meetings I've attended over Zoom. This has just been incredible. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been incredible.
Thanks for being here,
And
Tanner.
anybody that gives us less than a 4, Jay knows where you are.
Also, I forgot to mention that no matter where you live in the United States, I forgot that with virtual stuff like this, these people could be from anywhere. So wherever you live, you can get involved in any political movement, to help our 2A rights and everything. So if you're living in California, especially, we would appreciate you giving us a call and helping us out over here, so we don't become the next California.
One thing I did want to kind of throw out, because I know there's some questions that we may have not got to. If people have questions, they can email me at training@renoguns.com. Reno Guns is one word, and we'll be more than happy to get those back to you. I'm not one of those people that's going to, make you just be here. We want you to be here. I think have probably one of the best training facilities, no question in Northern Nevada, but probably anywhere in this region. And we just want to make people better.
I just want to add one thing for you ladies out there. The lady that owns Reno Guns and Range, she's my neighbor, Debbie. So if you're a woman and you want to learn how to shoot, don't be afraid. The range and everything else is owned by a woman, so you can guarantee that you'll be well taken care of and learn everything you need to learn.
Jay, tell us again how to reach you and how to reach Reno Guns. Website,
So
number.
yeah, the email is going to be training, TRAINGING. I'm sorry, no, TRAINING at renoguns.com. You can obviously get us on the phone at 775-826-2626. I can be reached at extension 120, which is the training line to me. We are currently, again, thank God, open 7 days a week. Our normal hours of operation are 9 in the morning till 7 at night, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 8 on Friday and Saturday, and 9 to 5 on Sunday. We will be getting up a lot of our classes that everybody's been screaming for, like home defense tactics, CCW tactics, here in the very short future. We do are one of the facilities that actually I bring in a lot of guest instructors. For the ladies out there, we have a gentleman coming in from Italy that does a woman's personal protection class. This is a non-weapon class, gets into the psychology of confrontation, fear management, de-escalation, assessment, and then it finishes with intuitive strikes. He also does our knife class, the fundamentals knife class, as well as the advanced knife class, which gets into ground fighting. We're going to be bringing in Rob Pincus to do some training. Derek Poole from Florida is going to come in and do an intuitive defensive shooting class and a carbine class, which those will all be on the calendar hopefully very shortly. And then we're also looking at bringing in Barrett Kendricks to do a low light handgun class that will have reality-based training in it. So you'll spend, part of the day on the range developing your low light skills and then moving into reality-based training to actually be able to evaluate that training in context against professional role players using real firearms, marking cartridges. It's just a great opportunity to expand your knowledge base and skill set. So if you got questions, definitely reach out to me. It's busy, but I will make the time and I will get back to you. If it's not that day, it should be within a day or two. I don't ignore you. I just stay busy.
Keep going.
Terrific. With that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much, everybody. Be
Thank you,
safe.
everybody. It was our pleasure. Thank you.